All right, good morning, everyone. I see you guys are starting to lag on.
Good morning.
We will start 4 minutes after 10:30 to let everyone in. I just wanted to say hi. We see familiar faces. Hi, Tori. Here.
Hi, Rena. Hi, Tori.
Hi, good morning, Tally and Catherine.
Good morning.
Nice to see you guys here. Good morning, Forum. And Zaira and Melissa, Elizabeth, Abigail, good morning.
Yes, thank you for joining. I'm admitting people as they come in. So if you see me looking to the left, I mean the right, whichever mirror of your Zoom is it. There you go. Perfect.
But yeah, it might not be morning for you guys, so it could be afternoon or good evening.
Yeah. That's true. So if you can let us know where you're from again, and also what level in your legal journey are you, like college, high school, law school, or in grad school, that'll be great. Most of you are familiar with our guest speakers today, who we will introduce shortly, from University of San Diego School of Law. Hi,
yeah, so go ahead, write out where you guys are from in the chat.
Let's see here. First year student for undergrad, Tori. Nice. And you know what? I know we're talking about law school financial aid and scholarships, but what you'll learn today will also be applicable for college scholarships. So it's good that people are joining, even though they're in high school. Yeah, high school, Melissa.
Nice.
Riverside, Zaira, thank you for joining.
And we have Melissa from Ireland. Hi.
Wow,
welcome.
Thank you for
That's
joining
awesome.
us.
Yeah.
And first year undergrad in Washington, Studi. Hi, thank you for joining.
And Natalie finished her bachelor's at UC Davis and is in her second gap year working at a PI firm in San Diego. That's awesome.
There you go.
Good for you.
You're local to our guest speakers.
Yeah.
And we have Forum Patel. Hi, Forum. Second year student at UCR and majoring in poli-sci. Okay. Welcome. Nice. All right, well, it's 10:34, so we'll go ahead and start now as people are trickling in. Again, good morning, everyone. We're here doing our legal chat about law school financial aid and scholarships. And my name is Catherine Lizardo, and I have my co-host here and partner, Tally Goody.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. It's nice to see you guys here.
Yes, and we have our guest speakers from the University of San Diego School of Law, whom I'm going to leave up to them for their introduction, but they are Dean Jorge Garcia and Mike Chavez.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Jorge Garcia. I'm Assistant Dean of Admissions, Financial Aid and Diversity Initiatives at the University of San Diego School of Law.
Welcome.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. My name is Mike Chavez. I'm the Associate Director of Admissions and Diversity Initiatives at the University of San Diego School of Law. I'm also an attorney, and I am a first-gen college student.
Excellent. Mike was the one who did the our legal chat regarding law school admissions before, and the recording of that is in our link in bio on Instagram. So feel free to check that out too. So Jorge, before I give the stage to you, I wanted to just remind everyone that if you can please hold off on your questions until the end. We will have question and answer portions 15 minutes before we end the show, and we'll go from there. Thank you, Jorge.
Thank you, Catherine. So let me just make sure this technology works here. So I'm going to share the screen. So this will be a slideshow.
Perfect. We see it.
All righty. So let me just started from the beginning. All right. So everybody can see it now. Perfect.
Yes.
All right. So here we go. For most applicants, the cost of the legal education is a factor in deciding where they're going to go. I think that it should be an important factor, just like the quality of the school, the location of the school, making sure that the law program is offering the courses that you're interested in. So all of those become factors in determining which school is the right school for you. I think that, I think that the one thing you need to walk away with once we are done with this session is to know that there is going to be a way to finance legal education for most applicants. The resources are available, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover, first of all, what is the true cost of a legal education, how to go about applying for the aid, the types of aid that is available to you, and then more information on loan repayment and forgiveness options, which in a sense become sort of like a scholarship on the back end. And so the application that most students will want to complete, and many of you who are studying in the United States probably are familiar with this form, which is the free application for federal student aid. The acronym is Fafsa. And what that does is it provides the information needed to the federal government so they are able to then approve you for federal aid, which is primarily student loans and work study. As a law applicant or a law student, you are now going to be considered an independent student, which means that you are now not required to provide parental information. There may be some schools, some law schools that will ask you to complete it anyway, just because they may have their individual need-based grants that they're going to want to use that information for. But in general, you just need to complete your information, not parents' information. The application becomes available every October 1st, which means that during the period of time that you're applying for law school, which generally happens sometime between September and February, you also want to be completing the FAFSA application. It is fairly short, and every year they seem to keep condensing it into less and less questions. But I think that one thing that you want to make sure you do is that you list the schools to which you want all of your information sent to. So there's usually somewhere between 9 and 10 slots that you are able to list the schools that you're applying to. And then that way, by the time you're applying, the financial aid office at that school will have your financial aid information, your FAFSA information, and then once you're admitted, they are able to then provide you with the package, the award package that you would then use to cover your expenses. The FAFSA will ask for information that's 2 years old. So, for example, people who are applying right now, income information will be that of 2019, not this year nor last year. It always trails 2 years behind. The other thing that this FAFSA will allow the financial aid office to do is you will get what's called the financial aid award letter. Usually what that does is on one side, it'll have all the estimated costs of attending law school for 10 months. So August or September through May or June. And then it'll also have the aid that they are offering you so you can cover those costs. One thing you want to be aware of is that international and DACA recipients are not eligible for federal aid, and therefore you are not required, or should you file the FAFSA. That's a conversation you would have with the admissions office or their financial aid office of each individual campus. There may be some schools that have their their individual or school-specific application, but the FAFSA would not apply. The award letter, as I mentioned, the award letter will have on one side the cost of education. On the other side, it'll have the list of awards. So if you are receiving a scholarship, that's usually the first line that they will enter. It will then try to fill up the difference between the cost of attendance and the scholarship and try to cover it with the federal or institutional student loans and then work study. And all work study is your ability to work while you're in law school, working on campus, and you are able to earn a portion of your aid. That way you don't have to borrow every single dollar that you may need. A perfect example is at our office, at the admissions office at USD, we hire students to become our student, you can call them ambassadors. They do tours for us. They help us with administrative duties. And they're earning an hourly wage that would then not have to be borrowed. So it is a good way to reduce the amount of debt that you could potentially accrue as a law student. And this is very similar to undergrad too. When I was a student many moons ago, I was a work study student in the financial aid office back then. So scholarships, this is what everybody is really looking for. And a lot of people refer to financial aid as only scholarships. Really, financial aid is anything that's going to help you cover your cost of attendance. So there are generally two types of scholarships that a school will offer. The vast majority of them are merit-based. And what merit means is that your LSAT and your undergraduate GPA will heavily factor into whether you get a scholarship and how big the scholarship is. So therefore, for those of you who are just starting college, or you're like in your freshman or sophomore year, your GPA is extremely important. So when, I would approach the GPA as like an investment on your end. The higher that GPA is, the more options you're gonna have as far as law schools, and also the less of a cost that it's going to be to you when you start applying to law schools, because the GPA becomes a big factor. It's generally about half of the calculation when you're looking at the academic indicators. Other things that law schools will look at is they will look at whether, they may look at students who are first generation college students. Some of us will use diversity as a factor when awarding some of these awards. So merit is really based on you as who you are, the strength of your application. Need-based, in many programs, they will look at the FAFSA application to determine your financial need. So, if you have a high salary, then maybe your need-based scholarship or award may be smaller than somebody who has low income or no income as a undergrad student. The other difference between scholarships can be some are guaranteed and some are conditional. So guaranteed scholarship means that all you need to do to keep getting it the following year would be to stay enrolled. So most scholarships come in 3-year packages. So let's say you get a $20,000 scholarship for 3 years. All you would need to do to get it the second and the third year would be to maintain enrollment. There are other programs that will have an academic condition or an academic stipulation. They will generally have either a GPA minimum or a class rank minimum. A GPA minimum, that means that, they'll say, for example, at USD, you need to maintain a 2.86 GPA in order to be able to get it for the following year. So every year at the end of the spring, they will look at your cumulative GPA and determine whether you get to keep it the following year. Because these are based on merit and on academic promise, they want to make sure that the award that's being given to you, you're meeting the condition that you're studying hard and working hard. Those conditions can differ from school to school. There are some, I mentioned that USD has a 2.86. There are some schools that may have a 3.0. There are some schools that in order to get the full amount for the second year, maybe you need to have a 3.5, and then you may get half of it if you maintain a 3.0. Every scholarship letter will have the conditions clearly listed. So it's very important that you compare not just the amounts, but also the conditions behind them, okay? Because as I'm sure everybody here thinks that they're gonna be, or hopes they're gonna be in the top 20% of the class, but sometimes things happen. So there is a level of risk whenever there's a condition attached to the scholarship, as opposed to just having it guaranteed. Class rank means that after the first year, they will line up everybody based on GPA from the person who has the highest GPA, and then order them all the way down to the person who has the lowest. And the class rank may say that, you know, you need to be in the top half of the class in order to be able to get it renewed for the following year. So it's not necessarily a specific GPA, it's where in that ranking do you land, and you need to be above whatever that cutoff is. So it could be like the top half, the top 80%, whatever that may be. So just be aware of those differences. And then there's also opportunities in second and third year at most programs. There are some schools that will award scholarships in the second year based on academic achievement, how well you did in law school. And in many programs, that's why the conditions are on those first year scholarships. And I'll give an example. USD, people who don't meet the scholarship GPA stipulation and the money is lost, that is then re-awarded to people who did meet it. So there's going to be always a group of people who either have no scholarship or have a very small scholarship. They end up working really hard during the first year, and then they get an increase or maybe an award in that second year. So all it is they're redistributing that scholarship to the high achievers. So just be aware that there are in many programs, and that's a question you want to ask each individual law school. Are there opportunities to get either an increase or another scholarship in the second and third year? Then there's also just other opportunities that may be available to current students. So, again, I'll refer to USD. The scholarships that we offer during the first year, all it is tuition money that's being turned around and given back as a discount to the cost of education. So we're awarding the scholarships out of the tuition money. We also have a very generous alumni base that gives us money to give for scholarships. Every donor will determine what the criteria is for those scholarships. So for example, the newest scholarship that was just funded by a law firm was specifically for Black law students. There's not a lot of Black law students in legal education, and what they want to do is they want to promote diversity in law school. So this law firm in San Diego is giving us $15,000 to award to a student in their second year. There may be scholarships exclusively for women because women are underrepresented in the legal profession. It could be, based if you're interested in a specific area of law, if you're interested in business law, or you're interested in public interest or immigration law. So, you want to inquire about those opportunities at whichever law schools you're applying to. We have about 120 privately funded scholarships that amount to about $500,000 that we award every year on top of what a student may have earned as an applicant. So there are going to be opportunities to get additional help. So one of the things that we encounter a lot is students who get an offer of a scholarship. They may be admitted to multiple schools, and what they're trying to do is figure out what is the best financial options for them. And they may get a scholarship that is, say, $20,000 at one program. They get a scholarship that is maybe $25,000 or $30,000 in another program, and maybe that difference in $5,000 or $10,000 is going to sway them where they go here or there because everything else is equal. So it is not inappropriate or unusual for students to request a negotiation or just a request for a re-review to see if they're able to get more scholarships. It is critical that that you be very tactful in those requests. You can't just like go and threaten somebody and say, well, if you don't give me more scholarships, I'm going to go to the other school. You know, that usually doesn't it's not a good start to the negotiating process. So the tone of your request is going to matter. It will always be required that you put it down and be ready to provide proof that you do have other options. So if you're saying, you know, school in New York is offering me, you know, $10,000 more than you, but maybe you want to say in California, is there a way that you can reconsider me for additional scholarship funding? They may come back and say, okay, well, let me see the letter from this school in New York that you are considering. And, you know, it's not that we're calling your bluff, it's that we want to see, okay, well, which school is it? You know, are there conditions attached to it? You know, what are those conditions? So we want to make sure that we don't just answer your question, that we educate you as to why the differences, if there are some, in those two awards. So, you know, be ready to provide that information. Also, you know, one of the things that is considered is, you know, are the schools that you are considering all sort of like peer schools? Are they just as competitive? You know, I'll give you an example. If I was to award somebody $30,000 and they somehow managed to get admitted at Harvard, you can't expect Harvard to give you the same scholarship that I'm giving you. You know, we're not the same type of institution. Those are, you know, T14 schools. They're very selective. So in many cases, they may offer you an admission, but no scholarship, where I'm offering admission, but I'm offering you a scholarship because in my pool, you may be considered very strong, and their pool, you may not. So just be aware that just because you're getting a scholarship from, you know, X school doesn't mean that everybody else is going to match it. There are differences. And whenever you have additional information that could improve your position, you want to provide that. So for example, if you take an LSAT exam again, and all of a sudden your score jumps, you know, that could mean that you are now in a new tier, and that could warrant an increase. Also, if you applied in, say, in September, and the last grades that you submitted were those of either the past summer or the prior spring, but now you completed your fall term and you got, you know, straight A's, which means that you got a 4.0, you do want to submit a new transcript, because that may mean that you may look just stronger and it could warrant an increase just based on your continuous hard work. So, you know, that's also something that you want to keep in mind. Move on to the next slide. Outside scholarships, you know, don't just depend on the universities and the law schools to provide all of the support. There are outside agencies that provide aid. For example, it could be a the local bar association, the state bar associations offer scholarships. There could be, you know, maybe if you work at a specific company, they may offer some scholarships. I know that, you know, there are certain companies that will, as long as you maintain a certain GPA, they will reimburse you for some of those expenses. There are some people who were a member of Greek Life that could, you know, get scholarships outside of, you know, just based on being affiliated with them. You know, make sure that you do searches outside of the specific law school. Now, our at USD, we have a specific webpage where we list all of the opportunities that are available that are not necessarily tied to the law school. And Mike, if you can provide that link on the chat, that's the outside scholarships webpage that we keep. You know, the first thing we do is we make sure that it's not some sort of a scam. As best as we can, we try to screen them. But anything that looks legitimate, we go post it there. And what we do is a short summary of what the criteria is, and then a link to the organization that is offering that scholarship. So, you know, the San Diego County Bar Association usually has scholarships. It could be maybe an affinity groups bar association. It could be the California Bar Foundation. The other thing that you can do is you can go to a free search engine that will do these searches for you. One of the ones that is free and it's fairly popular is FastWeb. So what they do is they comb through all of the internet and look for opportunities. So if you say that you are going to law school, you're going to maybe practice in public interest, you're a female, what that search engine will do is they'll keep looking for opportunities, and then they will email you whenever they find one. So it'll do all the work for you. The key thing is that, don't pay anybody to do this. Whenever you hit a website that, may come to you and say, we'll do this for you. If they at any point ask for a credit card number or they're asking for payment, don't do it. There are services that are available that are free where you don't have to pay. The whole point of you looking for scholarships is because you don't have money, not to give money to somebody to do these searches for you. Also, most of those opportunities will ask for a statement of purpose. Why do you feel you're deserving of their scholarship? So you may want to have like a stock, essay talking about yourself, and then have your resume ready also, because in many cases, they will ask for those too. It's not unusual to ask for like a 500 word statement as to who you are and why you feel their award would help you and how it could help you. So now federal student loans. There are generally two types of federal loans that are offered to law students. So at USD, about 80% of the students receive or borrow some type of federal loan. The state and federal government basically step back once you finish your undergrad. So many of you as an undergrad may have received Pell Grants or SEOG grants, or maybe if you went to a University of California, a UC grant. Once you go into grad school, all of that grant money pretty much disappears. It's now on you to fund your postgraduate education. So that's where the loans come in. The first loan that is generally offered is called the unsubsidized loan. The annual maximum that you can receive from this fund is $20,500. So in theory, it could be $20,500 times 3, right? So $61,500 would be the maximum over the 3-year law school experience. The interest rate it's a calculation. It's usually like an index plus a spread. But for this particular year, it was 4.30, which is extremely low when you look at, credit cards, right? Where a credit card can charge you 24%. It also is guaranteed as long as you don't owe the federal government any federal aid. So by that, I mean that you borrowed an undergrad loan, you didn't pay it off, you went into default. That would be the only thing that would keep you from receiving this, this loan. They don't look at, they don't look at credit scores. They don't do a credit, a history, check your credit history. It's guaranteed. They will charge you a little bit over a 1% processing fee or a guarantee fee as part of the loan. The next loan, which is usually what fills up the difference between the cost of attendance minus the scholarship, minus the unsubsidized loan, the difference there would be the Graduate Plus loan. And that has a 5.3% for this current year. So it's 1% over the unsubsidized. They will charge a little bit over 4% in loan fees. Okay, so just be aware of that. It is, they will look at your credit history, not at your credit score. So what they'll do is they'll check the last 180 days of credit activity. And if you are the type of person who misses payments, or you're late on payments, or you have, companies calling you in the middle of the night looking for, a payment, that will keep you from accessing this loan. So if you have any credit, commitments that you need to clear up, you may want to start working on those now, because you do not want to have this be what's keeping you from going to law school. You don't want to go and buy a new car right now. You want to keep your debt to a minimum, and you want to keep it in good standing. So the fact that you may have 3 or 4 credit cards, it's not going to keep you from accessing this loan. It's bad activity that's going to keep you. And historically, out of like 250 students that join our program, there's generally like one person who's having this issue. So what they will do is they will allow you to get a co-signer if you have that problem, somebody that's going to back you for that loan. And hopefully during that year, you clean up your credit history to where then in the second year, you don't need the co-signer anymore. You know, the co-signer can then be released from the responsibility of the loan. All right. All right, let's go on to the next one. So the difference between, well, the advantage of the federal loans, the federal student loans, is first and foremost is that they'll give you a number of options to pay those back. Whereas, like, for example, I have a credit card, they send me a bill every month and you say, this is the amount of money your payment has to be. I don't have an option of like, well, can I like reduce a payment, or maybe can you base my payment on what my earnings are? They're gonna say, this is your payment. You have until then to make it, you know, to make that payment. And that would be considered the standard repayment, right? What they do is they will take your overall debt and then they divvy it up over 120 payments or 10 years. And then that's your payment every month. Repayment on federal loans does not begin until 6 months after you leave law school. Whether you graduate, withdraw, whatever it is, you get a 6-month grace period before you start making any payments. And the theory behind that is that in 6 months, you should be able to, you know, find a job, establish yourself, and then you can start making these payments. So as far as the differences is the standard is 10 years, graduated repayment plan, they can extend it up to 25 years, which means that the loan payment every month gets smaller, right? Because they're extending it, they're giving you an extra 15 years. So that would be the graduated repayment. Well, because every, you know, the theory is that as you get, you know, into the labor market, your income should go up every you know, handful of years. You get like a salary increase, and then what they'll do is they'll extend the length of the period, but also every couple of years your payment goes up a little. It keeps going up to adjust what in theory would be your income. You can change from one payment to the other at any point. The last three, the income-based, income contingent, and you pay as you go, are all based directly on your earnings. So what they do is they will take a calculation based on what you're reporting as your earnings, and then they will come up with what that monthly payment will be. Every year, they will want to confirm what your salary is. So it could mean that, you know, if you go into, let's say, public interest and you're not making a lot of money because you're working at nonprofits, your payment can be as low as 0, right? Because they want you to, you know, they want to make sure that you're able to survive. So it's a complicated calculation, but just know that it does give you the ability to adjust your payment based on whatever your earnings are. It's not as rigid as the standard or graduated. Also, there's a program called the Public Service Loan Forgiveness, and I'll go into it right now. In order to be eligible for that, you need to be in that the pay-as-you-go program as the option, because that's the one that makes it eligible. And here's a link to the Public Service Loan Forgiveness. And what that is if you go into, once you graduate, into a nonprofit or government agency job, they will, and you're in the right payment program, as long as you make 120 monthly on-time payments, you'll make 120 payments. If you still have debt after that, they will forgive it. It just becomes erased. Okay, so and that is to encourage people to do public service type of work. It does not mean that you have to go and work 120 months straight at like a public defender's office or a nonprofit. It needs to add up over time to 120 months. And you need to be making monthly on-time payments. So it could mean that, say you go and you're doing it in criminal law, you go to the public defenders, you do it for 5 years, you then go and do a law firm for 2 years, but then you come back to the public defender, then the count picks up again, right? So you did 5 years, you have 5 years left. And as long as it all adds up to 120 and they're all made on time, then you qualify for the forgiveness for any balance that is left over after that. It is very important that you keep documentation and proof of your employment in these agencies, because they will require that you provide that proof. But just know that there is a possibility of graduating with debt and still be able to make a living if you go into a nonprofit sector. So this is a federal program that they will just forgive the loans. There's some law schools that have what's called an Lrap program, a loan repayment assistance program, where we will then help you pay back your loans. Okay, so if you go into, and I'll go into what USD's program looks like. It is exclusively for nonprofit 501c3 organizations. After 1 year of practice, if you go to USD Law and you're working in a nonprofit organization, you can then come back and apply for benefits. You're eligible for up to 5 years. And then, historically, the benefit, the annual payment could be anything from $4,000 to up to $20,000, depending on how much money we are able to spend. A lot of that money is donated by alumni. We have a fund, an endowment, an investment that produces a dividend every year. And so far, in 17 years I've been here, every person who was eligible was able to get a check sent to them. And this, in theory, is so you can then use it to pay back some of your student debt. So it becomes like a scholarship on the back end, after you are actually working in this sector. So you may want to look at school, if your interest is in government or nonprofit, look to see if they offer programs like this. I know that Berkeley has a humongous program that's very well funded. Georgetown has an amazing Lrap program. So what they do, just to give you an idea, their program is 10 years. So they, in a sense, are committing to paying your 120 payments. And then at that point, you then apply for the public service loan forgiveness and they forgive the remainder. So you never make a payment. Okay, that is like the gold standard of all Lrap programs. They basically carry you for 10 years and then they will forgive the remainder. All right, so let's move on.
Wow, Dean Garcia, I just wanted to say that's really an awesome program.
It is.
Yeah, that's everyone try to take advantage of that. You can get your loan forgiven if you just offer your services that way.
It is amazing, an amazing program. Okay, so other types of loans. Some universities have their own funds that are not federal. They have a fund that they use to extend offers. We use it primarily for DACA students, and sometimes international students may access that because they don't have access to the federal loans. Also, in many cases, the interest rate is low, and they also generally will have that 6-month grace period that most federal loans do. But just know that if you have federal loans and you have an institutional loan, now you have 2 payments when you graduate, right? So you have to pay the federal government, you also have to pay the school. So you also want to make sure that you consider that, whether it's a good thing, it's a good option for you. And then there's private lenders. It could be like Sallie Mae or Wells Fargo or Discover Loans. Those will probably get marketed to you. Somehow they find out that you're looking at law schools and you're going to start getting emails about, their loans, that you should look at their loans. They're cheaper than federal loans. And what they do is they will start you off kind of like a credit card with 0 interest or a very low interest. But unlike the federal loans where the interest is fixed forever, this one has a variable interest rate. So they will usually start you out with something very low, but then every year it readjusts and it keeps going up and up and up. And they have a very high ceiling, so it never caps out, right? It could end up being as close to a credit card in some of those cases. So be very careful with private loans. They also don't have the the number of repayment programs that they have. They don't have the forgiveness clause like the public interest forgiveness clause. I'm generally not a big fan of these for students who have federal loan eligibility. We will always recommend federal loans over private loans. However, every person is different, right? In many cases, international students and DACA students may have access to private loans. They usually will require that you have a cosigner that is a US resident. So if you have like a sponsor or somebody that would be willing to co-sign you, then you may have access to some of these private loans. I know of students who were foreign students who have had ties here, like whether it be family members or they had very close friends who would be willing to co-sign them, and then that's how they access the funds to cover their education. For VA benefits, that although it doesn't fall necessarily under federal aid or aid regulations, it is still aid that you may have access. So anybody who has served in the military may be eligible for Chapter 31 or Chapter 33. Some applicants will use those benefits because they went to undergrad. Maybe they went to the service during undergrad, they used up their eligibility or a portion of their eligibility, but they can also access it in law school. And what it does is it'll assist, it's in many cases called the GI Bill. It'll assist you in covering a portion of your tuition. It'll give you an allocation for books and supplies, and then they will also give you an allocation to cover your living expenses. And that way, you don't have to borrow these expenses. So it is clearly an option for people who have a military background. We also, there may also be eligible for the Yellow Ribbon Program, and these are for service personnel who served in Iraq or Afghanistan. They developed a program called Yellow Ribbon, whereby the law school will offer, in addition to all of the other scholarships, will offer another scholarship, and then it gets matched by the VA. So at USD, that is $7,500 to be matched by $7,500 by the VA. So that's an additional $15,000 on top of any scholarship that the person may have already received. Okay, so that if you have a military background, then that's something that you definitely want to research. There's usually a VA certifying official at every law school that will be able to give you information on that, or there's a web page. So before I get into this, going back to the DACA, the website, the posting, the link that my colleague Mike Chavez posted with the outside scholarships, if you scroll all the way to the bottom, we have a couple of links to resources that you can find for DACA recipients or undocumented students. It is really just a listing of a number of organizations that provide scholarships that are specifically for DACA recipients. There are some school specific. For example, at USD, we have 3 scholarships that have been privately funded for DACA recipients, but there's also organizations outside of individual law schools. So, we give you the link, it's free to use, it's a PDF, you can print it, take it with you, and then it gives you the links to where you can go and research that. And I also mentioned that, some lenders will provide opportunities for borrowing student loans as long as you have a cosigner. So to wrap all this up, prior to going to law school, don't go and buy a new car or take out a credit card from Nordstrom's and go run it up. You really want to try to reduce your debt as much as possible. Okay, you do not want to come across the circumstances where you can't access the Graduate Plus loan because you overcommitted yourself with personal debt. Try to keep that to something that's manageable. Complete the Fafsa. It comes out October 1st. At the same period of time when you're applying for law schools, you complete it. It has to be completed every year. So you would need to do this 3 years over the life of your careers as a law student. When you get your scholarship offers, you want to lay them down and figure out which is the best option for you. Are you okay taking a larger scholarship with conditions versus a smaller one, which is guaranteed? You know, are they coming from the law school that's your dream school? Are they offering you? So, you know, I always recommend that you develop a spreadsheet of all the factors that you consider to be important. And this one should definitely be one of them. And that way you can like look at all the factors and figure out, you know, how much out of pocket is it going to cost you? Never not apply to a law school because the tuition is X number, because that doesn't mean that that's what you're going to pay for it. If you apply to USC, which is like $65,000, but they're going to give you a $60,000 scholarship, that means that you're only on the hook for $5,000 versus applying to a scholarship that a law school that may only charge $30,000, but no scholarship. And there you have to pay $30,000, right? So it's really what you want to look for is how much out of pocket do you have to come up with, or how much are you going to have to borrow? So initially look at law schools for where they are, the opportunities they offer, the quality of education you will receive, and then figure out the finances on the back end. You know, how much out of pocket is it going to cost you? And that's what we mean by comparing the financial aid awards. If you have undergraduate federal loans, know that once you enroll in law school, they become deferred again. So if you borrowed, I don't know, $15,000 as an undergrad, you took a year off to, you know, maybe earn some money to get ready for law school, and you had to start making payments. As soon as you matriculate, those loans now again become deferred until you're done with that program. So they just get added up to whatever amount of debt you're gonna borrow as a law student, and then it becomes one payment that you would make once you graduate. They all get bunched up into one bucket, and then one payment is made for all of them. And then make sure that you look at scholarships that are just outside of the law school. Don't assume that whatever the law school is offering you is the only resource that you will have. There's plenty of other opportunities. And then always, you know, keep an eye out for Lrap programs if your interest is in public interest or government work. One last thing, make sure that you are aware that once you start law school, you know, you start applying to law school and you're admitted, we can't give you the money before you start school. You actually have to register, which means that there's going to be some expenses that you're going to have to incur on the front end. So if you're living in LA, but you're going to go to law school in San Francisco, you're going to have to move, right? So you're going to have to probably rent a U-Haul to haul all your stuff up there, get down to, you know, have a deposit for an apartment that you may have to rent. There are some front end costs that you're going to have to front, and you can't count on financial aid to get that before. So get ready, start getting prepared to have those funds available to you. So when you move and you buy your books and you know, maybe you want to get new clothes or, you know, whatever it is that you need to do, you need to take care of that yourself before that financial aid is dispersed. And as you get into your second and third year, there's going to be opportunities to get internships or research assistant positions that are going to pay you, right? So maybe you're going to go and work at a law firm that first summer or during the fall and spring of your second and third year. You should consider that as a replacement to the loans you have been borrowing, right? So if you're in your first year, you borrow $20,000, but then in your second, you have a job that's paying you $20 an hour, then maybe you don't have to borrow those $20,000 anymore because now you have that money coming in from your earnings. So try to reduce the amount of debt as you move along in your second and third year, because in many cases, you may not need to borrow that money. Maybe you're making enough to cover a portion of your food and a portion of your rent, and therefore you don't have to borrow it. You want to graduate with the least amount of debt possible because this, in many cases, is going to have to be repaid over time. Whew. And that's what I have. Mike, do you want to talk a little bit about Discover Law?
Absolutely. I'm about to share a link with everybody for our post. Let me try this again. With our post-event survey, it allows you to enter in your email address if you're interested in registering for discoverlaw.org. Discover Law is LSAC's Diversity Outreach Initiatives program. They provide content depending on what level of education you're at. Perhaps you're a high school student, community college student, maybe a freshman or sophomore, or you just graduated from undergraduate university. They have targeted information for you, information about scholarships, summer events like summer plus programs, which are month-long immersion programs, law school experience immersion programs, mentorship opportunities, announcement about events in your local area. So it's a great resource. You don't have to put your email address if you don't want to register for discoverlaw.org. You can complete the remainder of the survey just so we get a sense of like how this particular event resonated with you, and maybe what you want to see in the future. So yeah, it's a great discoverlaw.org if you're looking to connect with attorneys, learn what it means to be a practicing attorney in different areas of law, and of course, as Dean Garcia mentioned, paying for law school, what those financial resources look like. It's one site that gives you access to that information.
So one thing I know that there are some international students here. Know that as part of the visa requirement, you're going to have to prove that you are able to cover your expenses for a year. That's part of the visa processing. So in many cases, there may be some banks or loan programs from your country's government that you may be able to access, because you're going to have to prove that you can cover your stay during those 10 months, and which is usually the cost of attendance. So, clearly if you have a scholarship, that would be one source of funding. But I know, like, for example, I think Canada has, the government has student loan programs that are government run. So you want to do that research on the front end. So maybe they may be able to give you a loan that is better than what the private loans here would offer you. I know I covered a whole lot and there's a lot of questions. I don't know if Catherine or Mike or Tally, if there was something that you may want me to answer.
Yes, we have several questions in the chat, so we'll go over them. I do have a question though. For students, I like your advice that they should know how much they need for law school before going in. In addition to the cost of tuition, what else should they be thinking of that they should add to like the total cost of their law school?
Right. So the total cost of education, well, clearly the fixed amount is going to be your tuition, right? That can't be like negotiated. It is what it is. After that, you're going to have to live somewhere and you're going to need to eat. So room and board then becomes the second line item. There's going to be, if you may need to purchase, in most cases, law schools require that you show proof of insurance, health insurance. So whether you are carrying it by your parents, if you're under the age of 26, then you can waive off of it. But some applicants have to buy a policy, and most law schools will offer that. But that's also an expense that you're going to have to possibly incur. You have to buy books and supplies. So that's another expense. And then there's always like just miscellaneous things, like you have to go buy soap. You have to go like maybe give maintenance to your car. Maybe you need to get some new clothes during that year. So there's also an allocation. Usually those additional expenses amount to about 1/3 of what the tuition is. So, in USD's case, where tuition is $58,000, I believe the additional allocation is about $20,000. That would carry you to, pay rent for 10 months, food, and all the others. Now, keep in mind that we're taking an estimate based on what students tell us. It's not a fixed amount. It doesn't mean that that's exactly how much you're going to need. If you're able to secure an apartment that may be cheaper, if you just don't go out and eat at restaurants every day and you like pack your lunch and, take your coffee to school, then you don't have to buy it. And it's a lot cheaper to do that than to be buying things at, buying food and drinks at school. So there are methods of reducing how much you're going to need, and you need to really sit down and develop that budget on your own.
Good life skill overall, right?
Yeah.
One question we had is, how much does extracurricular activities like clubs in undergraduate matter when it comes to getting scholarships?
I would say that it factors, but it's minimal. It's not going to offset the weight that an LSAT or a GPA carry. I think it becomes very important when, let's say you have a number of people where their numbers are very similar, but one of them has done all these extracurriculars, then that person looks a lot stronger than the rest of them. But if you have, two or three, you were involved in your, Greek life, and you were volunteering here, and you were doing something else, and your GPA took a hit because you were overextended, well, that's a poor choice that you made as an applicant, because the GPA is much more important than the other pieces. So think of it as an add-on, all the extracurriculars.
I see. And in terms of negotiating scholarships, can you give us more specific advice as to how to do that? Like, who do they call and contact? And what would be, I know you mentioned tactfulness. Well, what's an example of how you say it to them?
Okay, so here's an example. Well, not every law school negotiates, okay? Not every, so the first question is, I am considering an email that says I'm considering a number of law schools. Do you negotiate scholarships? If they say yes, some schools actually have a form you need to complete as part of the negotiation, right? Because negotiating means that regardless of what everybody else's award is, I'm interested in mine, and I want to leverage some other offer in order for me to get more, right? That's the negotiation piece, that you have these other options. You can't negotiate if that's the only school that admitted you. What's your other option? Not attending, right? So negotiation usually entails that you have other options. So if they say, yes, we negotiate, then you want to say, why the other schools you're considering. So clearly you want to submit copies of the scholarship letters from the other programs. And then you humbly request that, it get matched or it get, increased over the others, whatever it is that you're asking for. There are some schools that don't negotiate, like I don't negotiate. The fact that you got a scholarship at another school, well, that's great, but I am making awards based on the strength of my pool of applicants and how you, fare against that group of people. The fact that you may be considering a school in New York State, well, that's great, right? But I don't really care how they award. I'm concerned about the fairness of my process. If I'm going to increase an award for one person because their GPA and LSAT show something, then in fairness, I should go do it to everybody else who does it. And the reason I say that is because culturally, there are some people that they're not accustomed. That's not part of their culture to negotiate. And why should they be punished? Because they don't know how to do this. So whenever I make an increase, I try to be as fair to everybody else. So it may mean that while you may be asking for $5,000 increase, I actually may have to make like $50,000 because there's like 9 other people that look similar to you. So what I will do is I will entertain requests for a re-review, right? So I'm more than happy to go back and look at the application, make sure that I didn't miss something, that I didn't under-award you. And in cases like that, there have been cases where I will reevaluate it because maybe the person submitted an extra, they just submitted a fresh transcript that showed more another term with very strong GPA, and maybe that warrants the increase. Or maybe they took the LSAT again and they scored much higher than they had originally, and that may warrant an increase. Because now I want to be fair to this person and put them close to what other people similar to them do. So, I think what you don't want to do is like come across as like you're threatening to withdraw if they don't give you more money. There's one person that emailed me today and says, I have $30,000 from a school in Chicago. I'm giving you a chance to like keep me. I was like, you know what? Bye. That I didn't even look at it. If that attitude really leaves a bad taste in your mouth, and is this really the person I want to have there for 3 years? I don't want to have that type of, the conversation every time I bump into this person. So it's very important that you request, not demand.
Wow, that tone is really interesting.
You should see some of the letter correspondence we get.
Yeah, Yeah, it's a good point because remember, guys, part of the getting admitted as a lawyer is your good moral character, and if you're going to be writing those threatening emails, that's all going to show up in the end. So be nice to everyone, be cordial. Everyone is here to help you. So no threatening. And I wanted to point out something that Dean Garcia said, a very key word: request for re-review versus negotiation. That just blew my mind, because go ahead and ask nicely and say, can you re-review, because I have a new information for you that I think would increase my score. So as a lawyer too, one of the skills you learn is to be able to provide facts to support, like evidence, they call that evidence, to support your arguments. So, and the words matter. Like what Dean Garcia said, words matter. So start practicing that now while in your application in college and application in law school, and to anyone that you're dealing with. So thank you for that great life skill advice. Another question is, what is the average interest rate like for student loans? Does the interest rate increase annually by any chance? And I added this question: which rates change and which don't?
So every year, the Department of Education will recalculate the interest rate. Okay, so they will run that formula that I mentioned, and depending on where, I think it's based on the 10-year T-bill. And what they will do is they will recalculate that interest rate for all loans to be issued that following year. So every July 1st, they do this. So last year, this past July, they did the calculation, and it came up that any unsubsidized loan that was going to be certified during this academic year will have a 4.3 GPA interest rate. Now, it's possible that interest rates may go up or may go down during that period of time, and they will recalculate it again in July, and then that would be the interest rate for that loan for that next academic year. So it is very possible that over the 3 years, if you borrow 3 different loans, every loan is going to have a different interest rate, but they generally have a cap. I believe the unsubsidized loan has a cap of like 7%, but it hasn't been 7% in, 15 years or so. Interest rates have been considerably low, and it's not like it's going to jump from 4.3 to like 7. The shifts are generally inside of 1%.
And the interest rates change when you're in law school and at the time when you have to pay the loans, right?
That loan is going to keep the same interest rate for the life of the loan. Okay, so and then what they'll do is once you go into repayment, they're going to take what's called the weighted average. So they will take, let's say you borrow 10,000 every year. Let's say it's going to be 5%, 6%, and 7%. Well, then if you combine them all, the average is going to be 6%. They take the average of the whole thing. And then when you start repayment, it really becomes one loan with the average interest rate for that specific, for the whole balance.
Great, thank you. Next question, is applying Fafsa for law school similar to undergrad? The earlier you apply, the higher chances at more financial aid?
No, because as I mentioned, there's no federal aid and no state grants. Loans, there's always loans. There's no, they never run out of student loans. So that generally doesn't factor in. Well, you know what? Let me back up. Let me take that back. Any school that offers need-based grants. So, for example, the UCs are mandated to offer need-based grants. They may require that you file by, I believe usually the key date is March 2nd to be able to determine whether you're eligible for any need-based grants. But I would say that 95% of all law schools, the scholarships are generally merit-based.
Sorry, I muted myself there. The next question, does the same apply for undergraduate student loans that I already have? Like basically what you've talked about today, do they apply to graduate student loans, not just undergrad, but graduate student loans?
So what I covered is for graduate students. Undergrads have two other options. Well, they have one other option, which is as an undergrad, you're eligible for subsidized loans and unsubsidized loans, right? Their amounts are much lower. They're like $3,500 and $5,500. And, but they have, instead of a graduate plus loan, they have a parent graduate loan, a plus loan. So the student is in a sense protected from borrowing too much because they're asking the parent to cover some of that debt. So instead of the graduate plus, it's the plus loan, the parent loan. So an undergrad could end up with say $3,500 in subsidized loan, and then the remainder could be plus loan. The difference between subsidized and unsubsidized is that as an unsubsidized loan, as soon as you get the disbursement to you in the fall, the interest begins to accrue on that loan, right? So you borrowed, say, $10,000. By the time you're out of law school, you may owe $11,000 because the interest has been building over those 3 years. If you borrow a subsidized loan as an undergrad, if you borrowed $3,500, 4 years later, when you graduate, you owe $3,500. The government is picking up the interest while you're in school. About 15 years ago, Congress, in their ultimate wisdom, decided that graduate students were not eligible for for subsidized loans. They turned everything into an unsubsidized loan, which I thought was a terrible thing.
Yeah, that's very unfortunate. The next question is, for the LRAP program, do law schools pay for a portion of your tuition? If so, how?
No, Lrap programs are loan repayment programs after you graduate. So, you are just like any other student. If you have a scholarship, that goes toward paying your tuition. If you go and work as an attorney in a nonprofit industry, agency, you then get reimbursed in a sense. You get benefits to you for doing this type of work. So, in theory, if you borrowed student loans because the scholarship was not enough to cover your tuition, and say you graduated with $70,000 in debt, LRAP benefits will help you pay back those $70,000.
Got it. And then next question, are the unsubsidized loans usually enough to cover tuition, board, living expenses, etc.? Or do you typically see law students having to take out the plus loan as well?
It depends on the size of the scholarship and the cost of attendance, right? So if you have, and I'm gonna make up numbers to simple numbers to make this work. Let's say tuition and tuition and living expenses are going to be $80,000, but you get a scholarship for $55,000. Then your difference is what, 25,000? That's 80 minus 55 is 25. Then the unsubsidized loan would cover 20,500, and then the remainder of that would be the graduate plus loan. Okay, so you would have to get tuition plus living expenses in order to have the unsubsidized loan be able to cover the whole thing. So generally, it's not unusual to see students borrow both of those loans. They borrow the maximum unsubsidized because that's the one that's cheaper, and then they will borrow some of the graduate plus. However, if you have savings that you can hit, then maybe you only need to borrow the unsubsidized loan because then you have savings that can take the place of the graduate plus.
Got it. And then also for the VA scholarships you were talking about, are those only for students who were in the military, or if they are also in a military family, like their parents?
No. There are some benefits, and that's something that needs to be consulted with the VA office. I have seen some students who benefited from their spouse's eligibility. So we have like a female law student whose husband is eligible for VA benefits, and she's able to access those. But that's really a question that needs to be posed to the VA.
Got it. And also, those are the questions we have so far. If you have any more questions, please type them in real quickly. While I wanted to just point out and screen share this website that Dean Garcia shared from the University of San Diego, the link that they posted on the chat. I was checking it out, and look at all those scholarships: academic scholarship, private scholarships, outside scholarship. Tally and I always get questions as to where can I find these things, and this is one link where everything is there, right? Scholarship for family law, for women lawyers, for monthly scholarship, and also this is the DACA financial resources that Dean Garcia was talking about. There's even writing competitions and VA benefits. So these are the types of information that you can look at. And then, you know what, from clicking to each of these, there will probably links to other financial aids. So each link is a gold mine, as a, pun intended, because they will provide additional scholarships for you. So, and then also too, I wanted to tell others that outside scholarships, I'm seeing them a lot on Instagram as well. So try to take advantage of that. Money here and there all add up. So, do we have any last minute questions? If not, Dean Garcia and Mike Chavez has been really gracious with the overtime. So any other last minute questions, just go ahead and type. Again, thank you, Dean Garcia and Mike Chavez. If you have any other last minute advice, overall tip for aspiring law students and getting money, what would be the one major thing you'll say?
I would say that I'll just say that outside of paying somebody to do this for you, just do the research. Look at all the schools who you're considering. They generally have a financial aid website, and just scroll through it and take notes and find out, don't pass up any opportunity because you think it may not be worth it. Like, there's some scholarships that are $500. Wow, that's really not a lot of money. I'm not going to do it. Well, $500, that's $500 that you're not going to have to pay back. So I would recommend that, you may even have a greater chance because maybe a lot of people don't apply because it's too small and you may be the only one applying. So, don't pass up any opportunity.
Yeah, and I'll just add, I'm going to share very quickly the Access Lex webpage here. It's a organization that provides financial literacy for law students, prospective law students, and additional resources. So also look at that. Put together a spreadsheet and just, document all the different scholarships you find, different amounts, which ones may be a little bit more tedious than others to apply for, and then prioritize them based on fit and maybe perhaps the amount of money, and then again, just the application process itself, deadlines. Until you have something that you can look at and you can review and what important dates are coming up, then you're just kind of shooting in the dark. So be very strategic about it and methodical, and you will have, even an extra $1,000, it may seem like a little bit, but when that covers perhaps a semester of books, like that's one less thing that you have to borrow money for or pay interest on, right? So, there are a lot of different organizations that want to help students pay for law school, and it just requires the students to then go find those sources. So.
Perfect. And Tori has a question, and Tori, feel free to go ahead and ask the question. You can unmute yourself.
Hi everyone. I just want to say thank you for everything. But I have a question about the LRAP program. And so say if I went to law school and I graduated, does that program pay a portion of my tuition?
No, because you already covered your tuition, right? You already graduated. In order to graduate, you need to be paying tuition every semester. So if you borrowed loans to pay that tuition, then the LRAP program, Loan Repayment Assistance Program, helps you pay back those loans.
Okay, so
Does
thank
that
you.
make sense?
Kind of, but I'm still kind of confused what the LRAP program is.
The LRAP program stands for Loan Repayment Assistance Program. That is a program that is structured for attorneys who are working in nonprofit or government agencies in some cases, and they will help. The program is structured to help pay back loans, loan assistance repayment. So you're paying back, they're helping you pay back loans that you borrowed to cover your expenses while you were in law school. So a scholarship is on the front end. A scholarship helps you pay tuition. A lot of people maybe didn't have a scholarship and they have all these loans. They go work for a nonprofit, and now the LRAP program helps them pay back those loans.
All right, thank you. Understand now.
Okay, great. And if you have any other questions, feel free to browse through our website. It has like a description of the criteria. Now, every LRAP program is different, every one of them. Some schools are very stringent, some schools are very lax. I know, for example, UC Irvine has a one that just started that's really good. But just go and compare them, because every one of them is going to be different. But they're all structured to help you pay back the loans after you graduated, loans that you used to fund your legal education.
And so a follow-up question about LRAP. If you work for a private law firm after graduation, the LRAP doesn't apply?
No. Well, in most cases, no. Most cases, the LRAP program is structured for attorneys who work doing public service. And the reason for that is because an attorney doing public service generally earns considerably less than the one that did a for-profit firm. So, they're trying to encourage attorneys to go and do work that is for the public good.
Exactly. So I think those are all the questions. Again, thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, Dean Garcia and Mike Chavez, for joining us. This has been really helpful, and the recording will be available. Tally and I will make that available in our social media, in our link in bio. So you can always look back at this and replay anything that you might have missed or want to learn again. And you can download those recordings so that if you're in high school right now or college and you're nearing law school, you can watch them again. Of course, things might change by that time, but these are very helpful tips that I wish I knew before I went to college and law school. So thank you, everyone. Dean Garcia and Mike,